The sentry tasted metal before he saw it. A low yellow-green haze hugged the wire, sliding through shell holes, quiet as morning fog. Men began coughing before anyone fired. Orders barked down the trench. Hold positions, keep low, wait for the wind to shift. Some had masks. Replacements didn't. A runner pulled a rag over his mouth. Too late. In that forward platoon, 9 out of 10 wouldn't make it out alive. To understand why they feared the cloud, we go to the first modern battlefield release. How it moved, what it did to a human body, and how men tried to fight it. Infantry were prime targets. The gas was heavier than air, so it slid into trenches and dugouts, turning cover into a bowl of poison. Medics braced for crush injuries and shrapnel. Instead, they got choking men with eyes burned shut and lungs filling with fluid. You can hear the stakes in a simple fact. Air became a weapon, and the trench itself trapped it. Dawn valves opened along a prepared line. Canisters vented low, counting on a marginal wind. The yellow-green plume crawled forward, slow and deliberate, marking the ground it would claim. Flares went up, some misread as a pre-assault signal, others ignored as routine illumination. Then the first coughs turned to retching. Rifles clattered to duckboards. A machine gun team checked their belt, aiming into a haze that hid everything. Diaries tried to describe it. A bitter chlorine smell, one wrote. Iron in the mouth, said another. Throat closing, a third scrawled in shaky lines. Stretcher bearers later wrote that they stacked bodies like timber at a communication trench. The phrase clipped and cruel, because that was the only way to move so many in so little time. They moved without shouting. Voices failed. Medical officers, trained to be clinical, wrote in flat terms that still hit like a hammer. Acute choking, laryngospasm, corneal burns, copious frothy sputum, rapid cyanosis. Translation for you: the throat slammed shut, eyes burned, lungs flooded with foam, skin turned blue within minutes. Mortality clustered in the forward platoons, where the concentration was highest and cover was worst. The gas didn't just irritate, it destroyed the tissue that let a man breathe. Unit-level losses were brutal, where masks weren't fully issued. Forward companies tried ad hoc rags, wet cloths, anything. It slowed the taste, not the dose. In one exposed platoon, 90% were put out of the fight before they could withdraw. Not all died on the spot. Many collapsed, blind and gasping, unable to hold a rifle, unable to find the ladder up to the parapet. You get micro-stories burned into the record. A runner collapsed mid-message, fingers still gripping the folded scrap. A Lewis gun team went blind. They kept the weapon firing by sound for a few bursts, then fell silent. An NCO ordered bayonets fixed, voice rasping and slumped 2 steps later. Meanwhile, in a rear aid post, a medic cut open a tunic and found the man's chest heaving like he'd run for miles, even though he hadn't moved. The immediate impact was tactical and human. Positions were abandoned. The gap opened. Units behind, hearing only sporadic fire, hesitated, then realized the line in front had dissolved. Survivors who could still stand were evacuated, coughing blood and bringing with them a new word that would live in their lungs: chemical pneumonitis. Command underestimated persistence. They believed the cloud would blow through. It didn't. It sat in shell holes and sapped strength out of anyone who dropped into them for cover. While those survivors choked in blankets behind the line, staff scribbled a simple order: improvise protection. They had to fight the air with whatever they could find. That decision started the countermeasures race. Countermeasures, desperate, imperfect, deadly. Every minute without protection meant new casualties. Rumors spread faster than orders. Men grabbed anything that promised even a thin layer between their lungs and the cloud. You can feel morale flex and crack when the enemy is the air itself. They soaked cloths in water, tea, even urine. The idea was simple chemistry. Ammonia might bind chlorine. In practice, it dulled the taste, but not the damage. Sandbags were torn open and held to faces. Helmets were tilted forward like crude visors. Some tied puttees around mouths and noses, none of it sealed. And without a seal, the gas found skin, eyes, and lungs. Diaries wrestled with the trade-off. Eyes felt peeled. One wrote, after wrapping his scarf and stepping into the trench to pull a mate out. Another noted, masks stank of ammonia. Some tore them off to breathe. Panic fought discipline in every section. A man who ripped away his cloth for one clean breath took in a dose that would drown him from the inside an hour later. Medical officers measured the false comfort. Their reports are blunt. Partial filters reduce the chlorine taste, but not the dose. Asphyxiation remained the primary cause. Corneal damage was common. The word edema shows up again and again, the lungs filled with fluid as capillaries leaked under chemical assault. They tried rinses with clean water, then hypo, sodium thiosulfate, on eye pads to calm the burns. It helped the sting. It didn't fix a flooded chest. Tactically, units built a thin routine around the threat. Gas sentries stood with wind vanes and litmus papers, eyes always on the weather, ears tuned to rattles and sirens. Orders spread to keep chins high when the cloud rolled in, to avoid shell holes that trapped the heavy gas, to climb, not crouch, if you could. The instincts of shrapnel survival, get low, hug cover, were suddenly lethal. Company outcomes lay bare how fragile these improvisations were. Where only rags and rumors stood between breath and death, attrition stayed catastrophic. Forward platoon survival plunged under 10% in heavy, stagnant clouds. That isn't hyperbole. It's a unit-level reality when concentration peaked and withdrawal routes ran through ground-level poison. Innovation pressure climbed. Engineers boiled charcoal in field stoves to make crude filters. Medics mixed stronger decon rinses. Officers demanded drills for donning in seconds, not minutes. Stop the coughing before it starts. Get something over the face before the throat closed. 6 seconds became a target, then 5, then anything faster. Because once the spasm hit, the mask might as well be a brick. Meanwhile, rear echelons pushed paperwork into urgency. Industry was told to solve a battlefield physics problem, make a seal on a sweating, terrified face, filter a corrosive gas at variable concentrations, and allow enough airflow for a man to fight. All in a package he could sleep with at his elbow. Diaries keep the human edge sharp. We stood to with rags in our teeth, eyes streaming. Someone started the rattle. We ran without orders. You hear fear, you hear self-preservation, and you hear the thin thread of training taking shape. But improvisation wasn't enough. The cloud kept finding gaps, in fabric, in routine, in nerve. Body 3, mask adoption, discipline versus the cloud. Survival turned into a contest measured in seconds. Training fit and seal now decided whether a man coughed once and kept firing or slid to the duckboards and didn't rise. Units received full-face respirators with rubberized skirts, anti-fog lenses, and filter canisters tuned for chlorine. It wasn't comfortable. It was a lifeline. Men learned to trust a thing that made breathing harder. They drilled in darkness, snapping straps into place by Phil, clearing the mask with a forced exhale, listening for the hiss that meant the seal held. Lenses fogged until anti-fog paste and split-lens designs improved it. The canisters were heavy. The rubber tugged at skin. But with the mask on, the world shifted from unlivable to survivable. Diaries change in tone at this point. Slept with mask on chest, reads one. Another. Drill in darkness until hands do it alone. A third called it breathing like through a keyhole, but then added, still breathing. Trust grew slowly, built by nights of practice and days of seeing mates live through a cloud that would have killed them the month before. Medical reports show the pivot. Fatal pulmonary edema dropped sharply in units with full issue and regular drill. Eye injuries persisted when masks went on late or lenses lifted in panic. Heat stress appeared in the notes. Men worked hard inside a rubber hood with limited airflow, but it was a problem you could treat with rest and water, not a death sentence. The language cooled from catastrophe to management. Unit-level stats tell the story you want to know. Platoons with complete kit and discipline avoided mass fatalities during chlorine attacks. Not zero casualties, never that, but no more 90% write-offs in a single forward section. Exposed squads without masks still suffered near total losses. The difference was the seal and the seconds. Tactics adapted again. Commanders used gas to screen assaults, throwing out their own clouds as curtains, forcing defenders to mask up, lose visibility, and slow their fire. Artillery targeted suspected canister lines and storage dumps. Sentries became specialists with protocols, not just men with rattles. Gas discipline moved into daily routine. The rattle drills, the mask checks, the lens cleaning, the canister changes by the book. Psychology didn't keep pace with the hardware. The fear stayed inside the men. Diaries mention nightmares of drowning on dry land. Some described mask claustrophobia, a rising panic when the rubber sealed, and the world narrowed to 2 fog circles and a rasping breath. Post-action notes talk about the long cough that hung on for weeks. They're factual, restrained, respectful of the reality that breathing itself had become a battlefield. With masks, the yellow cloud lost some of its bite. It stopped erasing whole platoons in minutes, but it still found the careless, the unlucky, and the gap between drill and instinct. The war bent to accommodate it. Men learned to live, fight, and sleep with a respirator within arm's reach. Conclusion: resolution plus, meaning plus CTA. Gas turned trenches into lungs filling with poison. Only training, seconds, and a sealed mask pulled units back from the brink. If you want more frontline medicine and primary voices, subscribe and watch our next Diaries episode right now.